Okay, now I'd like to leave the floor to Alessio Candi, who will be talking about the Pan Bianco research that we are going to talk about.
Grazie David, buongiorno a tutti.
Thank you David, and good morning everybody, ladies and gentlemen. As always, we have prepared a presentation with the goal of taking stock of the current situation and defining also the most important trends and data and figures that will be also dealt with during the interviews this morning. Well, let's start with the market. So thank you, Xil, for making all data available. Here you can see the first important figure and data, and it's something that we can see immediately. In 2021, we have a minus on the global market. We are talking about wholesale, so all the different ranges of products and all over the world, 2.7% between 2019 to 2022. And we can see that this sector that suffered least, well, during COVID, and to a certain extent, it also benefited from COVID. So growth in 2020 was very, very light compared to other sectors. Then we had a rebound effect in 2021, and now we are stabilizing. And I have to say that we should consider inflation as well. And this is a trend that we didn't expect in terms of general, balance sheet. We are talking about 581 billion, so we are talking about much more than before the pandemic. If we consider the different geographical areas, we see that there are very interesting figures. We have Asia, which accounts for 39% of the market, but it went a little bit back, it decreased in 2022. Due to the closing of the Chinese market. Then we have Europe at 25%. So what was strong on the markets? Well, the US, which account for 26%. Well, from the qualitative point of view, what is the structure of this market? I think that this information is quite interesting also, because if we consider the different ranges, the high end is worth about 8% of the market. So it doesn't account for a lot. And if we consider also the polarization of consumption all over the world, we expect, as this is the case in other sectors, this pyramid becomes kind of another different, completely different shape, so kind of a hourglass, as you can see here. So you see the high end and the high part, the top part, which is completely different. So we have the unbranded part, 85%, and 15% is branded. So we have talking about 581 billion, and the branded part is a very little one. Well, within this scenario, we can also take stock of the current situation in Italy. From the point of view of consumption, Italy accounts for 12.5 billion in 2022, quite stable, and it accounts for 2.1% of the world consumption. But what is interesting is also the data on exports, since they account for 15 billion. They grew by 13%. And what are the most important target countries? France, 16%, US, 14%. And then we also have China, 5%, Greater China, and Russia, 2%. So United States, China, and Russia. The export market is a domestic market. It addresses Europe mainly. And if we take a look at significant data, we see that the US, as we saw it before, in the overall exports accounts for 25%, plus 25%. But in the first quarter of 2023, they are at minus 10%. And in China, same applies to China. So we have 0%, minus 21%, and then we have Russia. Due to the war, we had minus 28% last year and minus 24% this year. Another important topic I'd like to highlight deals with consumption. Italy is not very significant in terms of consumption, but if we make a connection with the global market, above all the high-end products that accounts for 45 billion, our exports that were mainly in the high-end sector, 15 billions, make sure that the data that we can see is that Italy is quite good in the high end. So in terms of production, Italy is quite significantly present, and it takes over other countries as well. Let's take a look at the number of Italian companies. These are the 10 top Italian companies in terms of turnover, and data is very positive here as well. And same applies to what we were talking about the market. We have plus 26% 2020 to 2021. Then 2021-2022 we had a growth rate of plus 16%. This growth was quite stable, and these are very important data, since from an historical point of view, in the last 20 years, this is something that was quite rare. We are talking about a growth of 41% from 2019 to 2022. So quite an important growth. Well, the top company in Italy in terms of turnover is Design Holding, then we have Lifestyle Design, and then we will also have the opportunity to hear something more about from these companies, since we have some representatives here. Well, let's talk about the international level. Here we have the most and the major international listed companies at an international level. We have some interesting data as well. So growth and size, well, this is much more important here. Maison du Monde, and this is just a sample. We are talking about 1,240 million euros, and this is one of the this is bigger than the biggest one in Italy that we saw before. And here we also have plus 8% in 2021 with 21% of EBITDA, plus 6% with 10 in terms of EBITDA, 10%. And you can see also that in the first quarter of 2023 we are not having very beautiful, very significant data. We have minus 8% in terms of growth and 7% of EBITDA. And then we also have a special focus on e-commerce here. Well, here we have retail values in billions of US dollars. Well, these are still data. E-commerce accounts for 18% of the global market, more or less 100 billions, plus 18% in 2019, so a channel that grew a lot over the years. And I'd like to highlight a couple of aspects that are very significant in my opinion. So 1% is done by producers, manufacturers, so 99% is done by retailers in the furnishing sector, furniture sector, non-specialized chains such as those in the furnishing sector, and the retailers, so e-commerce specializes in furnishings. And the other topic is that more than 70% on the market of e-commerce goes to US and Asia. And these are the two areas in which we are more present from the historical point of view. Well, here we also have the data coming from the companies. Here we have the three most important companies, Wayfair, Williams, Sonoma, and IKEA. And we can also see the turnovers that were developed in the e-commerce sector by these players. Wayfair, here we have impressive figures. We are talking about billions of dollars. Between 2019 to 2022, we have 10% growth. In 2022, we are going back. So we had minus 11%. Williams, Sonoma, quite stable, 20% in terms of compound annual growth rate, but this growth rate stopped. We have plus 5% in 2022. 2022. And then we have IKEA. As you can see, CAGR plus 50%. In 2022, we are going back, so it decreased by 10%, minus 10%. So the concentration of the sector and the opening of capital continues, so it is pretty much scattered and, well, fragmented. Here we have M&A, mergers and acquisitions in the last 12 months, and we will be talking about that also during this morning. We will have some representatives, direct representatives from this sector. We had an IPO a couple of weeks ago, and we will also have the protagonists here on stage, and the EDB, IDB, 300 billions, and then we will also have another IPO in the near future, Design Holding, so fingers crossed. So the performance on the stock exchange, here we have the most important players. We are talking about capitalization of more than $36 billion, and in terms of average price trend last year, we had a minus as well. And this year, between January and July, same, minus 3.7%. Well, the stock exchange also anticipates the trends, and on the stock exchange, we don't see this double-digit growth that we had in the last few years. What are the main trends that we are looking at? As we saw after the post-pandemic rebound, the sector is in a phase of normalization. We have a generalized double-digit growth. It is no more there, so it was there after COVID for a short period, and the US has stopped running. This is something that we so also consider based on the exports in the first half of the year. And Asia, especially China, is expected to grow, to be a growth driver, but we are expecting a shift from US to Asia, but this is not yet visible in the figures and numbers. There is still a lot of room for our brands. As I told you at the beginning, the market is very unbranded on a global scale. We think that there will be a further polarization of consumption, and high-end can also have a better growth trends compared to the average trends on the market. And the Italian companies are too much focused on the wholesale channel and the product, and too little on retail and digital and to the consumer. So they are really focused on the wholesale and contract part, and not that much on retail. So what goes to the end consumers, so like e-commerce, for example. So what is the take-home message? We still have a couple of topics that need to be covered, very topical issues. On the one hand, we have managerialization, so the fact that it is suitable, or it is important for companies to include and to acquire new skills also coming from different sectors. And then we will also have the opening of capital. Many Italian companies were founded in the post-war period. Now we are talking about generational handover phase. We will foresee further contraction and opening of capital. Well, for 2023, what are our outlooks and forecasts? We think that it will be a year of stabilization with a minus, most likely. For the best companies, we will have maybe a single-digit growth, more in value than quantity. So it's not really about quantity, but it's more about value. And much depends on the reopening of China, which may bring a growth if it becomes once again the driver of the world. But the effects will be seen in 2024 rather than in 2023. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.